mental health is something that we don't talk about enough. In the black community, well, we're massively overrepresented in the mental health institutions, even more so than in the prisons. And again, these are questions we have to ask. Well, why?
But once you get a control and an understanding of who you are, no one can use you against you. No one can ever use your mental illness against you. You've already spoke about it, so what you got?
The biggest point in life to resolve mental health is like giving a fuck about a person.
Where did you get the courage? I got the courage. The 2 words. I care.
It's Chill Will Radio, where connections will be made, advice will be given, jokes will be told, and things will get real. My name is Willis Cooks, and I'm your host. But understand this show is not meant to be used as a substitute for a relationship with a licensed mental health professional. Enjoy the show, y'all. Yo. What's going on, peoples? What's going on? Hope everyone's doing well. Welcome everyone to another dope episode of Chill Will Radio. I hope everybody's doing good this weekend. This Sunday, I'm really glad things are starting to get warmed up. I don't like the cold weather. I don't like that it's been raining. I don't like any of it. So the fact that it's been relatively hot lately, is really dope. So for all those listening people who are tuning in, good looking. If you're not going to hear this today, but you're going to be listening to it tomorrow, next month, next year, whenever you get the chance, good looking to you too, man. How was my week and what's going on with me? The week has been relatively low. Really chill, really quiet so far this week. I think I've mentioned it a few times throughout the show. Within all of the hospitals that I work in, the amount of patients that are in the hospitals are really low. So work-wise hasn't been too crazy. I guess the big topic that kind of has been on my mind, not on my mind, but in my face a lot amongst a lot of the conversations that I've been having, is just this discussion between the individuals, the group of people who want to stay in the house, the stay-at-home people, and the people who are for opening everything up, right? Those protesters. And I'm on the side of letting everything open up, right? For one particular reason. Obviously, what that governor in the South is doing, I feel like it's just kind of flat out dumb, and you finna kind of get the black people to kind of play like the control group. A mayor in Las Vegas actually said that. She said, "I'm willing to put my residents here up as the control group. So if anything happened, it's on them." Right? The mayor of Las Vegas said that. However, for me, I understand that this is a conversation around classism, right? This isn't a conversation around, on one end, it's a conversation around safety, but on the other end, on a bigger scale, from my perspective, it's a conversation around classism, right? The majority of the people who are advocating for us to stay at home, they're either working, they're essential, right? They're working from home, they still have some income coming in, so they are not hitting, it's not hitting them as hard, right? So like for me, my schedule has not relatively changed. It changed a little bit. Like I may not be at work 7 days out of the week. I may be at work 6 or maybe 5 because the amount of patients in the hospital is lower. But my schedule and my bank account, my paychecks hasn't really changed that much, right? So me, I'm an essential worker. It is a privilege for me and for a lot of essential workers to say like, hey, stay at home, right? Because we're not feeling the full extent of what's going on out here, specifically when it comes to finances, right? And a lot of people are like, hey, well, they got that stimulus check that was, I believe it was kind of like hush money, but they also can get on disability. But there's a lot of things with disability that a lot of people don't understand. Like, yeah, they may have increased disability to an extra $600, but there's a lot of people who quit their jobs because they didn't want to get exposed to the actual virus. If you quit your job, you're not eligible for disability. If something happened at work, you may not be eligible for disability. There's a lot of things that will not allow people to be eligible for disability, but also disability is a process to actually get. It takes a good minute, so the first month was kind of, it was cool. But the second month, people are now starting to kind of run out of money, right? Run out of money. Their savings accounts is getting relatively low, and a lot of people don't really know how to save as it is, you know. So we're running on our last end. So I'm for the people who are not able to work. Obviously, if you're going to open it up very, very slowly and in phases. You know, don't just open it up back to like how it was, but at least open it up so certain people could begin to work, so certain people could get some type of income. If you're not going to do that, cool, but at least give them some more money, because a lot of people need to survive. You know, a lot of people need to eat, you know, and for me to say stay at home, and for me to say, oh, just wait it out, it's a privilege, right? I have that privilege as someone who is an essential worker or a privileged worker to say that. And there's a lot of people who aren't realizing that, right? I had this exact same conversation with a friend of mine that lives in Cleveland, and, you know, he did not believe that he was a privileged worker, right? He's a social worker as well, but he did not believe that he was privileged to be able to tell someone like, hey, work at home. You know, so I had to kind of break it down to him, like, you as a black man, right? You understand that white people have a specific privilege when it comes to doing certain things, or when it comes to getting certain jobs, or when it comes to getting away from things because they're white. He's like, yeah. I'm like, it's the same exact thing. It's just on a classism type of scale. You know, so this conversation is more so around classism than anything else. You know, it's a big privilege for you as the essential worker to say, hey, stay at home, without understanding, like, hey, there's people who can't eat. Like that $1,200 that certain people get, if you're already working, that's just free money, right? If you're already working, that's free money, and then you got your refund. So like me, I had got it, but I was like a few dollars below it, but I had got it, and then I got the refund check like next week, you know. So for me, it was like a good month because I'm getting all this free money. You know, some of it I gave it away to like my uncle and my family because I don't need it. But there's those individuals who are working, you're getting extra money for no specific reason. When it's people who, like my man Didier, he lost his job, right? My man Didier lost his job. I got another homeboy in the projects who lost his job. I know a bunch of people who have lost their job, and it's like, yeah, some of them may get hired when things open back up, but some of them won't, right? Because things are just gonna open back up to normal, and these stores aren't just gonna magically start getting the same amount of money that they've been getting before. Like that does not, the amount of business that they're gonna have is gonna determine if that person gets their job back or not, and I don't think everyone will. You know, so there's a lot of unintended consequences that's gonna come from this. Violence is gonna increase. Homelessness is definitely going to increase. Poverty is already through the roof, but that's definitely going to increase. Unemployment rate, that's definitely going to stay high, you know, because everyone's not going to hire as quickly as everyone thinks, you know. So I'm for the side of letting people open things back up slowly, but solely because people need money. People need to be able to work. We're not living in, I don't know, Idaho, where rent may be like $2. Like, nah, rent is a whole lot out here, you know. So, but moving on forward into the self-care piece, right? I think it was like a few weeks ago. The self-care piece that I put up a few weeks ago was to make daily check-ins, right? And I had gave that self-care piece to one of my clients during therapy, and then I checked in on her the next week to see how that was going with it. She was having a difficult time, and one of the reasons she was having a difficult time because she was making very generic type of check-ins, right? How you feeling? I'm good, and then move on about her day, right? So the self-care piece I want everyone to implement within their self-care regimen, along with, you know, making sure you have daily check-ins, but to make sure your check-ins are specific, right? Make sure your check-ins are specific, right? So I want people to check in with themselves at least like 3 times a day. Set an alarm on your phone to remind you just where you're at, right? Because I'm very, very big on monitoring your meter and your energy and seeing where you're at. And if you're not monitoring that, shit is going to get left really, really quickly, and you're not going to notice it until it gets all the way bad, right? So setting those reminders in your phone to check in with yourself is important. But when you set those reminders, be specific of that check-in, right? How am I going to check in with myself? Okay, if my daily check-in is to check in with myself, how am I feeling right now, right? How am I feeling about my first half of the day, right? How am I feeling about work, right? How am I feeling about this? Or ask yourself a specific question, you know, whatever the case may be. Just be specific in your check-in, so that way you're not just going to be doing it for the sake of doing it. Because what will happen is, How am I feeling? I'm good, and then we're gonna go on about our day. How am I feeling? I'm bad, and then we're gonna go on about our day. We're not really being mindful, right? We're not really being intentional about the check-in. A lot of things that we have to do in life has to be intentional, and if a lot of these things that we're doing aren't intentional, we're just going with the flow. And sometimes going with the flow could be kind of good, but the majority of the times, it's not providing you any real type of substance because you're not gaining anything from it. Right, so be intentional about the check-in, but also be specific about the check-in. Right, so the self-care piece I want everyone to implement within their self-care regimen. Be specific about the check-in. Be specific about your daily check-in. All right. So moving forward into the main topic, I got Jazz. Man, what's going on, player?
Hey,
How you feeling?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing really well, man.
That's
This is 77 episodes in, and I just got you here.
Right, the number of, what is it, completion?
times 2.
Time, right. So maybe that says something.
Hey, this might be one of them great episodes. How you feeling though?
I'm good. I'm, trying to navigate life through this pandemic, but a lot of opportunities are coming my way, and I'm making a lot of opportunities for myself. So, we're always on the move. So I feel good. Yeah.
How has this been affecting you?
It hasn't really. I mean, the only thing that is done, I'm big on community. So I do, whether it's feeding the homeless or the events that I have, that's like my bread and butter. So it stopped on that end, but I also am a journalist, and then I'm getting back into podcasting. So I've been able to tap into some other things that I've had on hold for a while, but I am big on like being around community. So that's the only part, but I'll try not to like harp on it too much.
Have you been doing anything to replace that?
I've done some like Zoom calls with Black women just so that we can talk and see what's up. Like, you
had like a Zoom Black woman discussion thing like a week or two ago.
Yeah,
right? That was dope.
a couple of weeks ago. So we just tapped in and like, I'm big on energy, so I just needed some of that energy, and we just tapped in and talked about how things were affecting us spiritually, emotionally, with our fitness. We had some really cool ladies in there, and then getting on calls. I've been on FaceTimes with multiple people, at a time, just trying to see like, where's everybody at, and just trying to get that good energy back flowing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dope.
Yes,
I appreciate you
yes.
for coming, for real.
I appreciate you for having me. I thought you had to be like some type of goat to get on the show, but you brought me on, so I was like, maybe I need to be a therapist or something.
I'm not, because some therapists don't be knowing what they be talking about.
Okay. Hopefully I know what I'm talking about in this conversation.
I mean, there are some people who aren't therapists that I would say would be more qualified than a therapist, right?
Okay.
The one thing I tell my patients all the time is that there's no difference between like me and you. The only difference is that I have a piece of paper that I went in debt for that says I'm able to apply for this job, which is to be a therapist.
True.
So it at the end of the day, as long as you ain't out here speaking reckless stuff, which I don't know you for.
I might speak reckless sometimes.
I mean, if it's warranted.
Okay.
Right? If
That's
it's
good.
warranted, you're not just going off of the mouth.
Yeah.
Right?
No,
So I
we don't do
appreciate
that.
I appreciate you for coming through.
Thank you.
How is everything going with New Black History Makers and things?
So, I haven't really put this out there, but I guess I can. We're about to. Wait, what'd you say?
I said my bad for doing that.
No, you asked about my brand, and everybody, not everybody, but people that know about it want to know what's happening. So we're getting ready to drop a podcast. I've been recording, so look out for that in the next 2 weeks. We're bringing that, the conversations that I have, people that are listening, you guys know I'm not afraid of any topic, especially when it comes to Black people. So we're just bringing those conversations to the podcast platform. So definitely be on the lookout for that. It's been in the works, for the past 2 months maybe. So I've been, trying to work and just making sure that I give you guys some quality content. So it's coming. So that's kind of what we're doing right now is the podcast. Yeah.
Hey, that'd be lovely. I can't wait for to hear it because I know it's gonna be dope. I know it's gonna ruffle some feathers.
Wait, that's the first thing that comes to your mind, that it's gonna ruffle feathers?
That's not the first thing.
Okay.
That's one of the things.
Okay. I'm known for that, but we do it with intellect, and we make sure
Exactly.
people know where we're coming from.
But that
so.
conversation, the ruffling of the feathers is needed. I feel like you're doing more of a disservice if you're trying to tiptoe around certain topics.
Yes.
Or not trying to speak about.
And I don't
specific
tiptoe,
things.
so.
Far from it. Here you coming. Here you coming from down the street. There
Yes.
go Miss Gates. Shoot. All right, but moving on forward into the topic, right? The one
Yes.
thing that we're speaking about today is cutting people off, right? And the reason why I wanted to speak about this specific topic is we all probably have cut at least like one person off within our life,
Yeah.
whether it be intentional or unintentional, right? Because we could kind of outgrow certain people, right?
Yes.
I don't really know if we could consider that cutting people off, but we could kind of outgrow specific people. And then within my work, I hear a lot of this when I'm doing group therapy, when it's coming with, let's say, either elderlies or young adults. Young adults, when it comes to them and their relationships, dealing with ex-boyfriends or current boyfriends, or even the relationships they have with their siblings or their parents, right? It is hard for them to kind of cut that person off or let go, right? It's essentially the same thing, but letting that person go, right? And I've always coming from this side of the end, this side of the couch. For me, it's like I feel like I'm the king at cutting people off. Like I will like cut you off and then walk past you as if I never met you. Because I understand attention is a very powerful thing. And if you do not provide that individual any type of attention, it's going to kill their whole little soul. So for me, it was kind of, in the beginning, it was kind of difficult to understand why certain people had trouble with cutting certain people off. But as, I started to hear certain stories, and as I started to really gain experience within the work, it's like, okay, there's some form of attachment, or the love thing is there, or I've just been in this person's life forever, or there's a low self-esteem, and I don't see myself moving forward with that person being present in some type of capacity. There's a lot of different variables that pop up that causes people to have trouble with cutting certain people off.
Right.
So one of the first questions I have for you is, have you cut someone off before?
I've cut people off before, yeah.
Why am I not surprised?
What? Okay, we're gonna get through this smoothly, Willis. Okay. I have cut people off.
Yeah.
Do I need to go into why?
You don't need to go into why.
I mean, do you want to?
Was it difficult? If you feel like it, but was it difficult to cut?
For me, I'm big. I hate to say like I'm big on myself, but I'm big on making sure like I'm at peace with things.
Okay.
So if you make me feel like I can step out of that element of peace that I have with myself, oh yeah, you probably are gonna get cut off. And once I get to that point and I feel like you have brought in some type of negative energy to me, or you're constantly just being a disservice to me, it's easy for me to just let you go. And I will act like you said, I will act like you don't exist, and I will walk right by you and just go about my business. It hasn't always been the best thing for me, but I do, know how to do that.
When you say it hasn't been the best thing for you, what do you mean?
Because I also feel like people need to be understood sometimes that you need to hear the other side of the story, especially if that person was something that meant something to you or meant something to your life. You do need to understand it. I get to a point where I'm like, Cole, no, I don't even want to hear what you have to say.
And that's what I is. Like, when it comes to typically cutting people off, I'm not the one that's going to like explain my reason, and it's just like, nah, I'm just done. So in terms of like hearing that other side, on one end I feel as if it could be needed, but on the other end I feel like for the sake of your peace, right? Because when you start giving that individual room to explain their story, or when you feel as if you need to explain their story, that's opening up the door a little bit for that other individual to kind of creep back in. Yeah. So explaining your side of the story is good, but I think when it comes to your piece, is it going to be harmful to your piece to actually explain it, or to hear even their side?
Right.
To a certain extent, I believe their explanation isn't worth your actual piece. Right. Does family is family is family something when it comes to cutting off his family? No.
Now I've done it before. Now I would advise against it. I think you came to one of my events when we talked about it, about kind of shelving family, and if you are going through a hard time with a family member or a family member is detrimental to you, figuring out if it's I can only see you once a month, and when I do see you, it's for 30 minutes and I'm out the door.
Yeah.
Or I can only see you at family gatherings when there's other people around, but we will not be sitting together at a coffee shop.
Yeah.
I think our family means a lot to us. Our family is the reason why we are who we are. You can't cut your mother and your father off and think that you're not going to experience some type of like disdain or some type of hurt from that. You are, and I think you have to deal with that. But you have to give yourself time to heal as well. So don't be like, well, that's my mom, I need to go and hear her out. Sometimes we need that year or 2 years to kind of like chill out.
Yeah,
but the whole cutting them off completely, that for me is just unrealistic for us as humans. We just can't live without certain things unless it's just like a complete, disaster, or it's just bringing you like physical harm. But we can't live without those people that have helped create us.
So would you say cutting people off is permanent?
Sometimes it depends on who they are. If it's a friend and you've overstepped some boundaries, okay, you have to go, and I probably won't bring you back or bring you back in that capacity.
Okay, so it just mainly depends on the person. What about when it comes to the whole growing aspect of it? I know earlier I mentioned that we may cut people off, or we may outgrow people, right? I have a lot of my close homeboys in which I probably go on the block and visit them probably like once a month, right? And they always get on me about like, yo, you don't come around, you think you're too good for the hood,
right? All
of this extra stuff. And it's not because, you're too good for the hood or anything like that. It's mainly because I'm not at that same place that I used to be.
Right.
I can't just kick it on the block.
Right.
I don't smoke, so I can't kick it on the block and just smoke trees like y'all are doing like all day. I just can't do that.
Right.
So from that scheme of things, it may be cutting people off when it comes to certain. It may be cutting people off when it comes to certain things and how far you're moving along in life. But when it comes to outgrowing certain people, right? At what point do you think for yourself it is wise to kind of start to slowly disconnect yourself from a specific or certain people?
Well, I'm a big fan of, I've posted about this a few years ago, but if I'm doing the work that I'm supposed to be doing, this self-work, and I'm, growing or whatever's happening, and I'm, entering into a different field of life, the people that are not supposed to be around are going to fall off naturally, because I've grown a lot. So when I think about when I was in college, where I was to now, it hasn't even been 10 years, but the different points of my life, the people that I was hanging around, not that they were bad or anything, but the stuff that I'm doing now is really different. I'm having to produce shows for podcasts. I'm sound engineer, and I'm trying to figure out how I can use my platform to be better for the community.
Yeah.
So I don't have time to just sit and be idle. Like, maybe we can chill for a little bit, but I know that I have to wake up in the morning because I do need to get some stuff done when it comes to my community, or when it comes to me speaking places. I'm going to have to come up with content and research it. It's not something I just get up and go do. So when it comes to that, and it's like, oh, will you come to an event? Some people are just not into it. So naturally, the time that we spend together will, decrease. And I'm just a fan of that. Like, if I'm, doing the work that I'm supposed to be doing, and you ain't supposed to be around, or you don't like what I'm doing, you're going to fall off naturally, and I don't even need to put any effort towards it. And it's no love lost, but it's just the cards were played, and that's where you ended up.
And then a lot of people take it as love lost, or as if you don't fuck with me, or we not good anymore because you too good, or you this and you're that.
Right.
And I think it's important for a lot of, and I think Snoop Dogg said this in some interview a while back, it's important to not degrade yourself by kind of going down to their level and where you're at, right? Everybody has a chance to grow, and for a lot of those people, it's their time to grow as well, right? And I can speak for the same as me when it comes to college and when it comes to now, right? Because college versus now, it's not the complete opposite, but it's a big difference.
Right.
Like, I'm not okay with selling drugs anymore, and I'm not suffering when it comes to like housing and all of that stuff, But when it comes back, that moment, I remember that one moment where I came back to the hood, came back to the block after my first spring break, and for me, it was kind of like a shot in the gut, that's saying like, hey, no matter how far you go, no matter where you at, certain things are just going to remain the same, right? Like certain things on the block is going to remain the same.
Right.
Some of your homeboys is going to remain the same. Your people is going to remain the same. That's at no fault of you. However, what is going to cause you, or what's going to be that one thing that's going to push you forward? What has been that one thing for you that's telling you like, hey, I can't continue to allow to be like certain people that I've kind of grown up with, so to say?
It's a responsibility thing for me. I feel, I say this often. I was born, I have both parents in my life. I was raised with both parents. We, lived in Carson. We didn't struggle. I didn't see struggle that often until I got 18 and was on my own.
Yeah.
So I feel like if I was able to live a life like that, there's no way that I'm going to keep catapulting and not give back or give to people who didn't see what I have. So because I know what it feels like to have the ideal family or to go through life ideally, I can be someone's advocate and say like, this is what they're supposed to get. For me, I just have this responsibility. And it's a real thing of, because to much is given, much is required, and I hold that dear to me. I cannot slip back into anything else or slip back into being irresponsible, because I know that there are kids, black kids, that are counting on me to wake up every morning and advocate for them in spaces that they're not seen. So it's just a responsibility piece. I really hold my responsibility to my community at a high level, and that's what's like kind of kept me afloat.
Do you think it's okay for that responsibility to kind of shift, though?
Into what, though?
Into, like, anything. Like say, for example, community is very, very big for you, right? Something was to happen in your life to where your responsibility is going to shift, or your mission, your specific mission at that moment is going to shift. Do you think it is okay if you was to put your responsibility down for a second and go handle something else? Or do you think that would hinder your growth?
What, handle something else, like a personal thing?
Nah, let's say, give an example. Let's say it's a more like it's let's say if it's a woman's health thing.
Okay.
Let's say if it's a woman's health thing, something that's revolving around black women's health.
Okay.
Right? And your responsibility right now is the community. Is it important to where it's still revolving around just specific solely the community? Or is it no, let's say the kids, right? Because the kids and the community are two big things.
Right.
Is the focus primarily going to focus on the kids if it was to shift, or are you going to try to keep everything as a whole?
That's a good question. For me, okay, so let's talk about how I got into being so involved in the community, because I was working with students. Yeah. When I saw the students and saw that they had these certain disparities, they was acting up, they weren't listening sometimes. You go back and try to figure out, why are they doing these things? Yeah. They're doing these things because of the community that they're in. So then once I initially when I got out of college, I wasn't really big on community. But once I got in the face of these kids, I was big on the kids. Then I realized that in 30 years, the people that we look at and like, you need to get your life together, those are where my kids are going to end up in 30 years. They've ended up that way because the community failed them. So when you bring up like the kids, it's like it's all encompassing to me. If I need to focus on and not focus on the adult side and focus on the kids, then I will. I'll focus on the kids with the drop of a dime, like before I focus on anyone else. So to me, it's like that is a part of it as well. But yes, I will stop working on feeding the homeless and dealing with my events to focus more on the children. So if that answers your question.
No, that answers my question really good. And one of the reasons why I asked that question is because I understand how big you are with the community. I look at it when it comes to me and my relationship to the community. And I think I spoke about this on the previous panel that we had on in terms of like role models, and how my role models weren't like the typical role models, mentor, like hey, big brother type of thing. My role models are the people that our role models are the people who are out here selling drugs, or the people who are dying, or the drug addicts and those sorts, right? I use them as role models to teach me what not to do. So I'm thinking of the lessons that I've learned from my community, right? And one of the things that my community has taught me is that the community will be quick to cut you off, or the community will be quick to hurt you.
Yeah.
At any given moment, right? And I'm thinking of the times in which I'm gone for college, I'm coming back, and now even though I grew up in an Antis-Park neighborhood, and even though I grew up in that hood my whole life and everything, when I'm gone for 5 years, I come back. You have these new kids that get put on the hood or get put on a community. Now they be pressing you as if like. So for me, it's the community shifts a lot, and I had got to a certain point. Willis, are you going to continue to? Are you going to grow, or are you going to allow the growth of your community to determine how far you grow? If that makes sense. Yeah. So that's why that question for me was kind of. I had to ask, because for you, you're very, very big on community, but for me, it's not big at all. So what would you say for those people who, like me, community is like, kind of is what it is type of thing?
I mean, I've realized when I first came into it, you come in, you're like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and you're like, oh my gosh, everybody needs to help. But then I realized that the work that I do, it takes a lot of heart. It takes a lot of passion. It takes a lot of restraint. I mean, you dealing with kids and you trying to get them to learn something, and their parents coming up and cussing you out, or they're cussing you out, and you like, I legit am only here because I want you to do good. So it's like, they're pushing back. And even as I've transitioned out of working in education, you talk about community, you'll have, this is a conversation for another day, but you'll find yourself fighting for Black people, and they will be the ones to combat you to say X, Y, and Z is not working, or X, Y, and Z is not, what's on the table. And I understand that everyone does not have the bandwidth to deal with it. Not everyone is going to sit up here and continue to fight for Black people when Black people are the main ones that are in their face telling them like, oh, what you're doing is not good enough, or people have told me that, and it's like, okay, well, go to somebody else's thing. You probably won't find anything out here that's doing what I'm doing and offering it to you for free. But I understand when people are not as involved, and I appreciate it. If you can identify that this is not for you, then it's good, because I don't want anybody in this position that's going to that's going to short our people. And not that it's a fault to them, but just because they aren't for it. We can use you in another capacity, and we'll gladly take whatever capacity that is.
And I guess that was going to answer my next question in terms of like getting back to the cutoff piece, and how sometimes the community could force us to cut ourselves off from the community, right? Because of either the lack of support from the community, or because I have people on my block that tell me like, yo, Willis, because you don't come around no more, you don't really have such and such to say about what goes down in this neighborhood, because you're not from the hood anymore, or you're not from the community anymore, because you go off and do your own thing. Do you think that when it comes to cutting off your specific people, and I kind of already know your answer to this, but when it comes to cutting off your specific people, do you think people may have a legitimate reason to cut your group of people off? If that makes sense. Like, are you talking about their reason is justified?
Black people, or are we talking about
Black people? That's the only kind of community we could think of.
I mean, but you said who's cutting off Black people?
Let's say if me, right? If I cut off my community, which is the Black people, or
so you cutting us off? Okay.
Do you think I would ever have a reason that would be justified for that?
No. What I mean, where else you gonna go? What other group could you, as the membership that you had with us, where could you get that membership anywhere else? Where could you feel more protected, even if you do feel like maybe we do antagonize Black men sometimes? Where could you feel more protected, more seen than in the Black community? So you may be hurt, that's valid, but the Black community is yours just as well as it is ours.
Yeah, and the reason why, the specific reason why I had to ask that question was based upon my interactions with clients and patients who feel as if I have to cut off all Black women, or I have to cut off all Black males, or I have to cut off like the whole block.
The patients feel like that, or you feel like that?
Not patients.
Oh, okay.
I don't feel like that.
I was about to say, let's dive into that. Well, let's.
I don't feel like that at all.
Right.
But the patients feel like that, and they may feel like that because of their upbringing, or because of school, or because of bullying, because of things like that. And I think it's important in understanding where else are you going to go. Like, because we could think that, like, hey, okay, if my black woman over here isn't going to do much of anything, I'm gonna go over here to this white woman and think everything is going to be good.
Right.
When on the other end, their intent for actually dating you may be a little bit different.
Right.
So I think when it comes to in relationship to my experience with my patients, with my clients, and them cutting off their people a lot of the times, I think it's about how could one person be able to get out of the whole generalizing people when it comes to specific things.
Right.
That would be my question for you.
I think we have to, so this is a self thing. You have to get to a point where you understand yourself. When you understand that you are full of BS sometimes too, and you understand that you have inconsistencies and you have done people wrong, you are willing to show more grace to other people when they do it. A lot of times we don't pay attention to that piece in ourselves. We think when we do something wrong, we always have to justify it. Sometimes our wrongdoings are not justifiable and we just messed up. And we have to see that and then go, and that will allow us to understand that sometimes people mess up with you and they deserve another chance. And I'll say that when it comes to black women, initially a lot of black women will say, oh, I don't deal with black women because we got attitudes and I like hanging around men. But it's like the same attitude she got is the same attitude that I have. Once I realized that and understood that she could have woke up on the wrong side of the bed, or there could be a whole bunch of stuff going on, even like with my health. I could have attitude every single day.
Yeah.
But I don't choose to. But I understand that someone that may not be as resilient as I am, or may just be at that day where it's just and it's just that day and we happen to interact, she's having a bad moment, it made me show more grace to black women, and then also show more grace to black men and stuff. Once I realized, like, I have my days. People have ran into me and probably have said the worst of things about me. But you know me. You've seen me on, multiple days. That's not exactly who I am. So I think we have to get to a point where we understand ourselves and stop putting ourselves on this pedestal like we are just justifiable all the time. Once I realized, like, oh, Jazz, you really be out here, like, wilding sometimes. It was like I now understood when another black woman wilded out, it was like, since I understand, like, I understand what it is, and this is probably not even your full truth. You just tripping right now, and you're allowed to. You're granted that.
You have to take a dive into yourself when it comes to when you try to cut a large group of people off, or even when you're trying to cut this one specific person off, right? Like you said, like you just mentioned, it takes two.
Yeah.
Right? Even though you may be cutting this person off or this hood off because of, you feel as if there's certain things that, may have happened, what is your part to play in it?
Yeah.
Right? If you're cutting people off, how much are you actually going to grow? Right? Don't cut this person off and then get back into the ways that person was doing, or get back into ways that are a little bit reckless, right? Don't cut off the hood and then go act the fool in another hood. Right.
Don't do that.
Don't do that at all. But be mindful of the type of growth when it comes to moving forward. Yes. And I think that's a piece of cutting people off that a lot of people don't really speak about, because normally we just cut people off just because we're mad. Yeah. Right? Not necessarily because it's like you're taking away too much energy, or because I'm just kind of tired. It's like, nah, I'm angry at you. Fuck you. I'm finna bounce. But we don't look at, the work that has to be done with self after it, right? Yeah. What do you think is important? What do you think is important after the fact for that person when you do cut someone off?
The person that did the cutting off. I think you have to work on yourself. Like, and I'll keep saying that. Like, most of my answers will have to deal with self, because even if I'm going through the worst turmoil and your hands are tied, you have no way of changing anything, the only thing you're left with doing is working on yourself. So my thing would just be figure out how we have to learn our triggers. That's something that I also am big on. Like, we have to learn what makes us upset. You learn that and then learn how to change your response to it. It might still make you mad, but you have to figure out how to deal with it differently. Once you do that, you'll start to grow more. And then the next time someone comes with that exact same response, you'll be like, okay, I've seen this before, and I know not to like wild out. I've had my share of wilding out and going off on people. I mean, if Keith is listening, Keith has a story, and getting checked by like multiple people after, like, yo, you cannot do that. Like, you know, you are, you know, going into this part of your life. I think it was like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But I've had to check myself. Like, you know, one, the person that I'm trying to be wouldn't do that. So I have to check that too.
Yeah.
My responses have to be different also because I have a responsibility to my community.
Exactly.
Whether I know everybody in the room or I do not. If there's a black kid, a black woman, a black man, I can encourage them at any point. And the same with me. They can encourage me.
Yeah.
But I don't want to ever be seen in a light. Now I've gotten to this point in a light where they can be like, well, she does X, Y, and Z, but she over here doing this, so I don't really understand what the movement is. You might see me get upset, but I'm more well-mannered now. So just learning how to, you know, deal with your triggers and change your responses. That's what I would say after.
Yeah, learning how to deal with your triggers, accept your responses, and also understanding that you may be a trigger for yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Also
Yeah.
understanding that you may be a trigger for yourself. You may be the one that's causing certain triggers, right?
Yeah.
Whether it be, you know, you going to a specific place, or whether you have these negative habits that are going to cause something to happen. You know, we're speaking about responsibility a lot, but also responsibility that you have on yourself.
Yeah.
When it comes to how you are holding up yourself, how you are identifying your triggers, and how honest you are being with yourself.
Right.
And I think a lot of the times when it comes to the after effects of cutting people off, we don't really dive back into self as much as we possibly should.
Right.
We just think that person is the cause of my specific anger or my specific pain and why I'm crying and things of those sorts.
Right.
And we think that's it. When necessarily it may not be that person, but it may be certain characteristics that you have within yourself.
Right.
And I think a lot of people and a lot of us, we don't really know how or when to identify it. When it comes to your shift, right? When it came to your shift, what was some of the characteristics that you've noticed that I've had to kind of get rid of to be able to fully get to where I need to get to?
I'll say anger. For me, I mean, I didn't have like anger issues. I didn't lash out like to the point where I needed to go to anger management, but I did get to a point where I would just be like, I mean, the situation, like, I guess Keith can bring up, I was angry at what was happening, so then I reacted to it and didn't process my anger first. So I let the anger come and take complete control of the whole situation and what I had to do. And that moment of blacking out, that's what anger did to me. It was just like, I'm not like blackout and like just like wilding out and be like, oh, I didn't know what I was doing, but just like blacking out to the point where I didn't care what was going on around me. I don't care what you thought, or what you thought. I was going to do what I needed to do to prove my point.
Yeah.
So removing that, learning myself, I'll keep saying that. And then also just like spending time looking in the mirror. We don't look in the mirror a lot.
Time with yourself.
So like learning who I really am, not just, oh, you're Jasmine Renee Gates, here's your identity, but like learning what makes me who I am, and learning like the good about me and the bad about me. And the beautiful thing about that is you really learn the skill sets that you have, and you learn what makes you a good person. So once you realize that you possess all those things and you realize how valuable you are, it makes you want to grow. Like you have no other option but to get to the next level within yourself, and then all these other opportunities present themselves to you. But learning myself and the good and the bad, that's why I can freely talk about, you know, the mess that I hold or, you know, the BS that I've acted in, because I know that I've learned myself enough to know that my good is great. Like it's really something that I'm glad about, and I haven't even tapped into all of it, but I know that my potential is there.
Exactly. It's I like everything that you said, but especially when it comes to tapping into that own particular potential that you have. A lot of people, and I'm always going to be speaking from the aspect of a therapist and from the aspect of, you know, my client's perspective, right? A lot of them believe that like, hey, I'm like the bottom of the barrel. I can't do this. A lot of them have that imposter syndrome or severely depressed.
Right.
And I'm not great. just who I am at that moment. And a lot of things that went on in my life is because of me. What was the one thing that caused you to see the greatness within yourself?
The one thing,
or multiple things if it's not one.
well, I would say growing up, my father, he doesn't like when we say father. My dad, he always, he just told us, you're a leader. Like he said that like he said good morning, kind of like, you have to be a leader. Don't follow people.
It was just instilled.
Yeah. So when I would get in trouble, and I think it may have backfired a little bit, but when I got in trouble for me. Like, I didn't get in trouble for nobody else. I whatever I did, I was going to get in trouble for me. I wasn't going to get in trouble for nobody else. I did it, and you could believe that. So I knew back then, like, you have to live up to, not even that you have to live up to that. I was just walking in the affirmations that he gave for us. Like you have to be a leader. You have to look up to something. I was also born and raised in the church. So I saw leadership in terms of the church on like in front of my face. I had a front row seat to it. So it was like, you look at the church and how people idolize the pastors and stuff. It was that I didn't necessarily want that same thing, but I knew that I wanted to make that impact the same way that they were. I mean, you have preachers that have been pastor in churches for 50 years, 40 years, to come in every Sunday and have people look up to you and revere you. That's a lot. But I also wanted my works to show that. I didn't want it to just be, she's so-and-so, so we respect her. I want my work to be the reason why you respect me. Mm-hmm. So I think, just when I was younger, when I was going to school, like, school was kind of a breeze for me. And not like that, but I got good grades. And then I went to like I guess it was an all-white and like Hispanic school, elementary, and being one of the only black kids there, but being the black kid that was like excelling at everything.
Top of the class,
yeah, it was just something that like I kind of fit into. So, we didn't have a choice to fail. I mean, with the parents that I had, I definitely didn't have no choice to fail, but you just, walked into that. And then I hooped and went to college hooping. But now with my life, like with hooping, it's like, okay, you shoot, you don't know if it's going to go in. Of course, you can practice, but you really don't really know if it's going in. You can feel it, but you don't know. You don't know if you're going to have a good game or an okay game, a great game. But with the life that I'm living now, I have full reins. Like, if I want to have a good panel discussion, I know how to make that work.
Exactly.
It's not me just shooting into the air. I can go and prepare my butt off and make sure that this conversation is going to work. Or if I want to create something for the kids, I have full range. I can put the ball through the hoop, as many times as I want to. So playing basketball allowed me to feel how it felt without like a hands-on grip of my own success.
Got it.
Which made me appreciate now more that I can control my success now, like in my adult life, if that makes sense.
It does. And I think it's important, too, for a lot of folks to understand that you may have those moments or those times in which you're not going to feel great. Maybe because, let's say, for example, at that school, if instead you didn't have the grades, right, and let's say you were the lowest in the classroom, right, it's going to be a contradiction in terms of what you're hearing in the house versus what you see on paper. And I think a lot of times it's important for people to see, people to understand that what happens in that specific moment obviously does not define you, but what really defines you is what comes after. And that's why the after effect when it comes to cutting people off is way more important than that specific moment, right? Because a lot of the times, as you were stating earlier, it's just whenever we're cutting people off, it's mainly just like an energy thing.
Yeah.
I just can't take any more because now my tank is on E because you kind of sucked it all out. And if we're not doing anything on the other side to kind of refill that tank, we're going to kind of always be hurt by that person, by that specific community, or even by the family, right? I think of the last panel discussion, not the one that I was on, but the one I had attended.
Okay.
And I think of that individual who was was going back and forth with one of the panelists in terms of the disconnection, or how it may be hard to kind of connect back with someone that may have caused me some type of pain in the past, or caused me some type of trauma. And I think a lot of the times when it comes to people who are cutting off, let's say our family, it's important that we obviously want to be understanding of the triggers we identify, but also how am I allowing this person's pure presence to kind of kill me, right? Because a lot of the times we may not have to cut that person off physically, because they're family. Some people may just be around, but
Right.
we may have to cut off the ties that person has to our actual spirit.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times, sometimes that may be what's most important.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jazz, good looking for coming through, man.
Yeah, of course. Anytime.
Good looking for
Anytime.
coming through. I have another topic I want to speak to you about. We'll speak about that after the show.
Oh,
Should
okay.
brought that up later.
I'm like, okay.
I will
No,
speak that up
yes.
later. But question
Yes.
that I never really write down, but I always just pop up and come up with it right on the spot. When it comes to specifically to cutting people off,
Mhm.
right? Do you think it ever, when it comes to specifically cutting people off, and I'm thinking of these individuals who like have kids, and I'm speaking about the kids right now.
Okay.
When it comes to these individuals who have kids, and for me growing up, I've had to cut certain people off. I had to cut, let's say, certain family off and back off for a specific moment because of certain things that I'm doing.
Right.
No, because they're kicking me out, and I'm not looking at it as it's because of something that I'm doing. So my question to you is, what's one of the first steps outside of digging into self? Because I know that's going to be your first answer. But what's one of the first steps that a person has to do in order to heal some of the wounds or reattach the ties that was cut with that specific person that you did cut off? Coming from a kid's perspective.
Well, identify them. What are the wounds? Because I think sometimes we go through so much pain that we don't know where it's coming from or why we feel away. So I would say identifying them, and then also forgiving. And I don't want to say like, oh, forgive the other person. Sometimes you have to forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for allowing that to happen.
Facts.
Don't think that you were, the reason, especially for the kids. Like, a lot of times kids will bring that on themselves. Like, they acted like that because of me, or this happened because I wasn't, enough or
My
whatever.
life is a mess, and it's my fault.
Right. So forgive yourself of thinking that you were the reason why. And then if you get to a point where you're able to forgive the other person, then do that. That also helps. But I think we often miss that part of forgiving ourselves, because we feel like, if we were perfect, then that wouldn't have happened. And that's not the truth. The same way that, that individual is going through something, the person that caused that pain to you is going through something, and it may not have had anything to do with you. You just were the person that received that negative little stint at that moment. But I would say identify the wounds and then work on forgive. I guess that is like the self piece. Do I need to go a little further?
Nah, you good.
Okay, so not working on yourself. Well, I guess it's all back to you. It's all back to you. Once you get, I'm telling you.
Once you identify that wounds, it's going to go back into you at the end of the day. And I think identifying that wound and acknowledging that wound is a hard part for a lot of people. Because we know it's there, but we don't want to look it in the face.
Right. You don't want to look yourself in the mirror. People do not want to look in the mirror. How many times have y'all looked at your face like in the mirror and just stared at yourself? Whether it be like literally or metaphorically.
Exactly.
We don't even know who we are, and we walk around and we get to know everybody else. We give everybody else all of these aspects of us, and we have no idea who we are, and that's a problem. Like, get to know yourself. Especially during quarantine. Like, get to know who you are, and you might be disgusted with that person, but the good part about it, you gonna be with you till the day you die, so you have time to fix it.
Exactly. And get out of this whole aspect thinking that you do know yourself.
Right.
Because you may know yourself at that specific moment, but shit is going to change. You can walk outside, something happen, your whole perspective on life is going to switch up.
Yeah.
So get to know yourself as much as possible. All right, Jasmine, good looking.
Of
Coming
course.
through. Coming through.
Thought I was gonna say no.
I mean,
What you mean? You mean? I wasn't gonna say no to you.
I was going to say something smart, but I keep that.
What were you gonna say, Willis? What were you? Because you did good. But what were
I
you
did.
gonna say? So I mean, the beginning was rocky, but the conversation was okay. So I guess you can say your smart remark.
I keep that to after the show.
Oh, goodness.
I'm not an asshole as much as people think.
No?
I try not to be.
Try. Okay. That doesn't mean he's doing it. I mean, he's trying to. He may not always be successful.
Oh man, good looking, Jazz.
Of course, I'm
Thank
always here. Good news is home. So
As always.
shout out to you.
Your picture is still up.
My
there,
picture
too.
is still on the wall. Yo, I was
you
the
better not take
first
it down.
weekend my show was here. I was here for 2 years, almost 2 years.
Almost 2 years.
Yeah.
Did you ever think Kiefer took it down? Like, did you come in here after
I
the show
did.
one moment and think, like,
No, I remember I said, is my picture still up there?
oh, that last time we was here together.
Yeah, I was like, is my picture still up there? And it's still up there.
Yeah, Keith.
Keith is a real one, though. Keith is a real one, and I really appreciate him. So shout out to him and all the work that he's doing and the good news. I'm a fan. I'm family.
All
So,
of it is. You
yeah.
take it down, she gonna beat you up. So.
I'm not going to beat him up. What's funny is when you first came, Keith would tell me, you need to link up with this dude. He coming in with a show on Sundays. And I was like, who is he talking about? And he would be like, you need to link up with him. Like, y'all going to be doing something. I could just see it. And we didn't start getting cool until like,
recent.
yeah. So I was just like, Keith, he always just talking. But now things are in the works.
It was
so,
it was the same way with me. And
the Oracle.
Keith is where I'm more of a I'm gonna let the energies flow
Right.
type of thing. Keith is like, nah, A and B come
Right.
together
Even
now
if it
type
don't
of
fit, it's
thing.
just like, no, y'all gonna do something.
Y'all gonna work, motherfucker.
Right.
You
I
know.
mean, so I guess that was like 2018. This was
yeah,
2018,
when everything was first going on.
Yeah,
When
so
it first
shout out,
started.
I mean, to Keith. I guess Keith knew
Keith knew, Keith good news.
the Oracle and the Podfather.
I'm not gonna give him that Oracle tag, even though he give himself that, but we gonna keep it going.
He's had it for like 2 years
For a
now.
while.
Yeah, when we
Forever.
went to Milwaukee, I think somebody was like on the plane, like, and gave him like a stone that people that consider themselves oracles wear. So he wrote that thing on out.
Rode it to the wave. Hey,
Yeah.
good looking to you, Keith, man, and everything we got going. But
Yeah.
shout out to all those people that's tuning in. If you're gonna tune in tonight, good. If you're gonna tune in tomorrow, good looking. If you're gonna tune in, I don't know, next lifetime, good looking to you too, man. It is always understand. Ain't no wealth without your mental health. So please stay blessed.
Yes.
Take care of yourself. Be great, y'all. Peace.